Good day, everybody. So this week we're talking about education, diversity, and judgment. Let's first talk about education, and then we'll talk about how diversity and judgment, all related to three concepts, result in, at least what we hope, is a better decision. Education. Education in this country has been around for certainly centuries. Not in its current iteration. It's changed, it's morphed considerably. Most remember that when this country was first started, we did not have compulsory education, meaning that you had to go to school. Instead, most of those that went to school, and school was often in terms of weeks and months, not necessarily years, are those that did so because they wanted to enter into certain professions. Law for one, medicine for another. There really wasn't a great training program for teachers. But over time, there was a recognition that in order for society to benefit, in order for society to progress, we needed to have some type of educational system. One of the earliest systems was called the Common School. It started in Massachusetts, the Common School. And that was to, in some ways, create a system where people have both a shared identity and then a shared understanding. Shared identity of the country and a shared understanding of what it would take in order for people to participate in society. That people needed to have some commonality, some bind, that not only draws them to each other, but draws them into this country. At the time, the country could have been a community or even a state, let alone a country. Common School existed until about the 1900s, and it transitioned in to the later 1900s to a school where you had to have some sense of compulsory education. You had to go to school for a certain number of years. Today, of course, you have to go to you're around 18 years old, most through high school. Quite a few people, unfortunately, don't graduate high school, more than should. But there is a need and a recognition and appreciation that we should have some schooling that details still that commonality of purpose, meaning why our country is formed. We hope to teach people certain values like truth, honesty, work, that if people in this country follow those values, that the country will be better off. The country will continue to progress, or what we like to say is, will continue to advance. And also so that they can contribute and participate. So it's not just that they can be a participatory person, but also a contributory person, one that contributes their skills to the betterment of all of us. It's almost like Bon Jovi or Lady Gaga or whoever is the greatest singer today. They have a certain skill that they share with us. And if other of us share our skills, whether for me it's writing or teaching, everybody utilized and promoted their skills, we would all benefit. Everybody has a different set of skill set, a different set of talents. And if we use all of those to the benefit of this country, of this community, then the whole world is what we would call enlightened. Which leads us to our second word of the day, second word of the week, which is diversity. And how as we move from education to diversity, what's the nexus between the two? It's actually quite a strong nexus. Diversity is about differences. It's about celebrating the differences between people. It is not what some people indicate, is that you have a special characteristic that you have to, in some way, accommodate for. And accommodation is a word that we really shouldn't use in diversity. We don't want to accommodate people. We want to utilize people. We want to utilize people who have different strengths. And with those strengths, we want to utilize them to make a better, more interesting, more vibrant, and progressive world. At the heart of diversity is that argument, that we're going to take what is unique about a person and utilize that to make our world become even more enlightened. In education, we learn a broader range of subjects. Through learning that broader range of subjects, we become much more knowledgeable about education in general. The same occurs with diversity. We see, interact, and learn from a broad array and a range of people. There's almost 200 countries throughout the world, and if you have the benefit of traveling, you can meet so many different people. We want to learn from these people, even though they may have cultures and philosophies and perspectives different from us. there's something that we can learn from just about everybody we meet. It's a great Chinese saying that says, the 70-year-old man can learn from the 71-year-old man. Just that one more year of learning can make somebody a bit more wise than somebody who's younger. Of course, that depends on the experience they have, but the thought remains the same. So you have much to learn from people if you only so choose to listen, often instead of talking. Education and diversity are similar because we have this broad array, whether it's in educational subjects or whether it's people. And by exposing ourselves to those broad arrays of knowledges and people, we can make a more informed perspective, taking into account people's opinions and thoughts. We can coalesce those into coming up with our own. This broad background, which we call experience, can help inform us on not only the educational component, but the people component. If you only talk to one person, you only have one person's perspective. If you talk to two people, you have two people's perspective. If you read one book, you understand the perspective of that author. But if you read two, you're able to now discern what the differences are between the two. Therefore, education and diversity really require people to have that broad array. The broad array of experiences which come from interacting with more than one subject and more than one individual. And that leads us lastly to judgment. There's a great saying that says, I'll read it to you, that good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. You can't have good judgment without experience. And so much of experience really comes from bad judgment. You make a mistake. You have to learn, I'm never going to make that mistake again. But had you not been in the game, you would have never made that mistake. If you've never made the mistake, you've never had the experience. If you've never had the experience, you never could have good judgment. This is why experience is so profound in our world. Of course, you can't just, to take analogy from baseball, you can't just walk out on a baseball field and have balls hit to you if you're the shortstop and expect to continue to make mistakes and then all of a sudden not make any mistakes anymore. You have to learn and study the position of shortstop. You have to obtain an education. You have to talk to people who've been a shortstop and learn some of the tricks of the trade. Get a diverse perspective. When you put the education and the diversity together, you then are ready to experience the role of a shortstop. As much studying as you've done, you never could know exactly how to be a shortstop until you get into the game. So education and diversity can lead to better judgment. This is what we study when we talk and converse about education and diversity. One other point. Everything we've talked about is useless unless you get into the game. You have to get into the game. You have to play. That means that you lose, because rarely do people win in every game. You can be a great baseball hitter if you just hit 300, which is 3 hits out of 10. It doesn't seem very hard. In baseball it is. But even in football, you can lose a number of games and still win the Super Bowl. We count too much the losses we have rather than the wins we have. And so, as we go forward learning about education and diversity, trying to get that great judgment that we all want to have, to possess, so that we can become more enlightened in our approaches, never forget that you have to first get in the game. You have to be willing to accept the losses. Because only then will you learn as much as you need to hopefully in the end win. Thanks everybody. Enjoy.